Can you tell me a story?
Sure. Once upon a time, a mom needed a new car.
Was she brave?
She was tired, mostly. But she went to Carvana.com and found a great car at a great price. No secret treasure map required.
Did she have to fight a dragon?
Nope. She bought it 100% online. From her bed, actually.
Was it scary?
Honey, it was as unscary as car buying could be.
Did the car have a sunroof?
It did, actually.
Okay, good story.
Car buying you'll want to tell stories about. Buy your car today on
Carvana.
Delivery fees may apply.
He is a former Mojave County deputy sheriff's detective. He's here to talk about investigating extremely violent crime, the trauma, the impact on him, and what he does about it today.
Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. There's a couple ways you can stay in touch and keep informed of what's going on with the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Number one, go to our website, letradio.com. Sign up for our email newsletter. It's real easy to find. I promise we don't spam you. I send out about one email every 2 weeks or so. And there's also a feature called broadcast channels on our Facebook page where we send messages directly to your inbox, directly to your messenger. Real easy to sign up for. Make sure you like or follow the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. And up top, you'll see broadcast channels, one for free podcast versions of the radio show, another one top post of the day. So you too can stay informed quickly, easily, and best of all, like always, free.
Contact us from Arizona. We have Dustin Dobbyn on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Dustin is a former Mojave County, Arizona deputy sheriff. He is a detective. He is here to talk about some tremendously traumatic, violent crime that he had to deal with, that he investigated. And I'll let him explain it to you. He's also author of the book Perseverance, The Operator's Mindset, and a website where you can find him, get more information about it. All he's up to is tacon1.com. That's TACON, the number 1.com. Dustin, thank you for your service, and thanks for talking about it on Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Both very much appreciated.
Hey, yeah, thank you, John. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. There's one thing about police. There's a lot about police and a lot of people don't get. But one thing that I don't want to dwell on this, and I don't want people to misread what I'm saying. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I don't want any of this stuff. But it's far more traumatic and violent than people realize. And I think where you were, Mojave County, Arizona, I don't think that's a booming metropolis, is it?
No, it's not.
But that doesn't mean you're immune from this bad stuff happening.
That's correct, yep.
And see, I made a mistake early on in my police career. I thought I worked in Baltimore City, and I thought the county guys had it easy. They didn't handle. They're out directing traffic. They're getting cows off the road. I didn't think about stuff. I didn't think things like backup is 30 minutes away. I didn't think of a lot of things. I just thought of man, they had it easy compared to us. And I really didn't get a better grasp of that until I retired from police work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I had transferred from a city agency to the county, and that was a realization that became very apparent very quickly. What
city were you at, and did you Mojave County? So one of the biggest things, obviously, was manpower and manpower numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I transferred from the Kingman Police Department, which was a city where, it's typical your backup's 2, 3, maybe 5 minutes away at most, to the 5th largest county in the nation where backup could be hours away.
And by the way, you'd never want to be in a fist fight, a fight for your life, and backup is an hour away. I'm just telling you, 5 minutes seems like an eternity.
Oh, absolutely.
And one thing I will say this, and I'm not saying this as a negative, if you are stopped by a state trooper or a deputy sheriff and backup is a long ways away, this is not the time to decide you're going to fight and flex, because you're probably going to lose that battle. There's a reason why they work by themselves, and they do that for so long, and they're quite proficient.
Absolutely. Yeah, your tactics change a little bit, but your officer safety is number one.
I saw an interesting, before we get to your story, I saw an interesting thing on Facebook. And by the way, Facebook, look for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. You'll find us. We've got 170,000 followers and growing daily. We have a group, Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast, the group, which is also growing as well. But one of the things I saw was an LAPD. So the difference between LAPD and LA County Sheriff's Department is obvious. LAPD is more professional, and the LA County Sheriff's Office, they can be a little bit more gruff.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the trend anywhere.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't think that. I wouldn't think that. I always thought, look, I'm preaching the choir here, but I always thought that the county guys were nicer than the city guys. Yeah,
and I think it depends on who you get, which officer or deputy you get. There's good ones, easy ones to deal with, and then of course there's the ones that are a little hard nosed than everybody else. But I think being out in the county, like you said, being out by yourself, knowing that backup is much further away, you tend to handle things a little bit differently, and the margin for error is a lot less.
How old were you when you made the switch from the city police department to the county sheriff's department?
Ooh, man, I was probably 29, 30, maybe.
You're still a young guy. Did you do military before that?
Yes, sir. I was in the Marine Corps for 6 years prior to joining law enforcement.
Well, by the way, I worked with some great, and I'm an old timer, a lot older than you, Dustin. I was trained by a lot of Vietnam combat veterans that were police in Baltimore, and we had a few members of command staff, they're Korean War veterans, and they did not play.
Oh, no.
They did not play, and there was a big proponent, and there still are, and everybody I know, the big proponents of respect, and that you give respect all the time to people you deal with until they change the tone of the conversation, and then there's absolutely zero backing down.
Oh, 100%. No better friend, no worse enemy.
That's exactly right. And some of the best police I worked with were prior military, so thank you for your service there as well. When you made the jump from the city police department to the county, was it a bit of a shock for you?
I think the nature of the calls for service was definitely a shock. I made the transition. I had some friends who were at the neighboring county agency, and the agency was growing. They were developing a SWAT team. The detective bureau was growing, so there was a lot of opportunity for growth, which in a small town in Arizona is, crucial.
Well, all I know about Arizona is the song from the Eagles about Winslow, Arizona?
Yeah.
That's the only thing I know about Arizona. I don't know anything about it other than it's hot and it's dry.
Oh, 100%.
By the way, I'm of Irish descent, and that doesn't go well with me. So you saw a big opportunity and you made the decision to leave. What was your first reaction when you left and joined that sheriff's agency?
Well, so I had a sergeant from Kingman Police Department. He had lateraled over as well. So naturally they put me with him, and he had left, maybe 2 months or so prior to me. So he, kind of showed me the ropes of the county. But, the first culture shock was, I think one of the first calls I got was theft of goats out in the county area. So I definitely knew I wasn't in the city anymore.
Well, that would be a wake-up call. By the way, I never made it my first call. We didn't have GPS. We didn't have all that stuff. We're given a battery and a map, and my first call was way down the hole of 622 Post, and I never found it. Someone else handled it. I don't remember what it was. I just remember, oh, my goodness, what do I do now? And then here's the thing. So the first time I handled a DOA, that's dead on arrival, and it was an elderly person in a modified quasi-old folks home that had died unexpectedly in their bathtub. And first of all, there's no dignity, there's no self-respect, there's none of that stuff, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle it. It was a far cry from theft of goats. We're talking with Dustin Dobbyn, and when we return on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we're going to talk about some of his experiences investigating violent crime. He's the author of the book, Perseverance, The Operator's Mindset, and a website we can get more details about Dustin is TakeOn1.com. That's TACON, the number 1.com. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. I promise you. We'll be right back.
I try to start my day every day with rooms on the Clubhouse audio app that is free. Think of the Clubhouse app as your own talk radio station, and best of all, it is free. And make sure that after you download the Clubhouse app that you follow John J. Wiley or look for @LET Radio Show. That's the free Clubhouse app, and follow John J. Wiley or look for @LET Radio Show.
I sold my car in Carvana last night.
Well, that's cool.
No, you don't understand. It went perfectly. Real offer, down to the penny. They're picking it up tomorrow. Nothing went wrong.
So, what's the problem?
That is the problem. Nothing in my life goes as smoothly. I'm waiting for the catch.
Maybe there's no catch.
That's exactly what a catch would want me to think.
Wow, you need to relax.
I need to knock on wood. Do we have wood? Is this table wood?
I think it's laminate.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's close enough.
Car selling without a catch. Sell your car today on
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
I drive my bus in a busy city. That's why road safety is so important to me. I know that I must slow down and be extra careful when I make a wide turn. Buses need more room than cars. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, remember to give buses plenty of time and space to finish turning before driving ahead. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Return to conversation with Dustin Dobbyn. He is a former Mojave County, Arizona Sheriff's detective, and he's also author of the book Perseverance, The Operator's Mindset. Website is tacon1.com. That's TACON1.com. He's a United States Marine Corps veteran as well. He worked in a police department in Arizona and also the Sheriff's Department. We'll talk about those in a few moments. First of all, Dustin, you said that theft of goats was your first call, and that was your wake-up call that things were a little bit different.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and, like you had mentioned previously, the unmaintained and unnamed roads, having to rely on maps and things instead of GPS, whereas, a city is, built in a grid and beats and everything's laid out for you. It was definitely an adjustment for me.
And then you get the enormity of the call. I don't want to look like the guy that, what are you saying? I want to be the radio go, what did you just send me to?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely had to hit the Arizona revised statutes a little bit more to find out, how to handle some of these types of calls.
But the reality is, look, those types of calls might be few and far between, but there's also there's the heavy-duty calls, and one of them was an arson fire where the family of 5 was involved and 2 were killed, 2 children.
Yeah, absolutely. Very tough call.
And how long were you in the sheriff's agency when that occurred?
So I had been there probably over a year at that point. I was pretty fresh as a detective, only a detective for, maybe 4 or 5 months at that time.
And you get this dropped in, and by the way, probably the good news is you got promoted to detective. The bad news, you got promoted to detective, and it's on you.
100%.
And did this, when you got dispatched this call, did the enormity of it hit you immediately?
Yeah, so, we had been to other arsons. I was a part of an arson task force because we had a little bit of an arson problem going around in the county area. And, the smells of a structure fire is something you'll never get out of your nose.
Right. No. And the only thing worse than that for me was the smell of burning flesh.
100%, yeah.
And to this day, I can't really understand. But when I look at arson investigations, and look, to me, that's a foreign skill set. They can determine the source of the fire. They determine whether it's arson, whether it happened accidentally. Where were you? Take us back. Where did you find out that this was set on purpose?
So at the time of the call, we didn't know for sure, but we knew one of the people in the house had a previous suicide attempt the week prior, which was pretty violent, and that individual ended up surviving both that encounter and this fire. So originally it came out, detectives were dispatched to investigate whether or not this was an arson, and ultimately we ended up finding out it was not intentionally set.
Well, that's some good news, but there was multiple victims in this, right?
Yeah. And, there's the trauma aspect of it, having been to the war in Afghanistan and one of the most deadly places, staying in Afghanistan, bodies and things like that are something you expect. But, it's never anything easy to deal with when it's children.
And you had, I'm looking at the notes, you had a family of 5 and 2 were killed, and they were 13 and 5.
Yeah, which ironically was the exact ages of my children at that time.
Well, that's a double whammy, because people say this all the time, as if it's easy to separate the two. It's not easy.
No, especially when you're looking at, the charred remains of children. All you picture is your children, that exact same size, that exact same age, and, it hits home.
And one of the things you said was, and I'm not trying to diminish your service overseas, but you kind of expected this kind of bloodshed and trauma in Afghanistan. Did you expect it in Arizona?
Not to the extent that we experienced it. This was during COVID and those times. So crime had picked up, homicides had picked up. We were extremely busy during this time.
Right. Oh, I had a guest on the show, Maureen Enner, recently, and her husband was Oscar Rocha. He was at the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, and he developed line-of-duty COVID-19, and he died. And she's still in a fight with the county for her benefits. And that's a different conversation for a different day. But we didn't have that when I was policing. We didn't have pandemics.
Yeah, and it showed on the crime stats as well. People being cooped up at home, the stresses of layoffs and losing people's jobs. Homicides went through the roof. We would go back to back homicides, officer-involved shootings to, you name it, violent crimes all over the place. It was very, very busy.
The only thing I can remember was, and this is really unique weather-wise, in the wintertime, domestic violence would pick up more because people were home more. But one thing that seemed to be predominant back in the day, way back in the day, is when there was snowfall, we had an uptick in rapes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I never understood why the correlation between it. Just maybe it was. And I learned this lesson as a rookie. Never say, oh, it's a quiet night, because that's a guarantee it's not going to be quiet.
Oh, yeah. You're jinxing it.
And the other thing I don't understand, too, and we'll get into a conversation with you, is the full moon. And people, I say, as if I'm supposed to be a believer in that, I mean, the gravitational pull's the same, whether it be a full moon or partial moon. But the weirdos seem to come out when a full moon's out.
Oh, 100%. I don't know the science behind it, but I know it's true.
So what was the outcome of this investigation for the arson fire? You said the good news is it was not intentionally set.
Correct. Yeah, we were able to get some video footage from the neighbors where we actually saw an extension cord had sparked the fire on the front porch, and there was a bunch of paint cans and gasoline cans, so flammable substances there. And it was a mobile home type structure, so it just went up very quickly. And unfortunately, the parents were unable to get all of the children out of the fire before the whole house was engulfed.
And here you were about a year in, detective, and did you feel an enormous responsibility?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So, I wasn't even the case detective on this case, but the guy who was a very close friend of mine, and, I was there for him throughout the whole case. We drove to the hospital together to, get interviews from the rest of the family who had also been severely burned and had smoke inhalation. We had to drive up to Las Vegas because that was where they were flown out to, the nearest level 1 trauma center. And, again, during COVID, the strip, everything was completely empty. And, the whole case seemed so surreal during that time. And, thank goodness the drive was about an hour and a half where myself and the other detective could decompress and talk about some of the things that, we were struggling with dealing with that case.
I can imagine that there's a lot of things that you're struggling with, especially with your children being a similar age, 13 and 5, two of the victims we're talking about. An accidental fire that wound up injuring a family of 5 in Arizona, killing 2 kids, 13 and 5 years old. We're talking with Dustin Dobbyn. He is a former police officer in a city in Arizona, became a Mojave County Sheriff's detective. Before that, he was a member of the United States Marine Corps serving in Afghanistan. He's authored the book Perseverance, the Operator's Mindset, and his website to get more information about him, what he does, takeon1.com. That's TACON, TACON, the number 1.com. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
They say that it's not about how much you earn, it's about how much you save. And that is partially true. If you can take some of that savings and turn it into high-yield investments, you are way ahead of the game. Get more details on how you can get started at letsavings.com, letsavings.com. Again, that's letsavings.com.
I drive my bus in a busy city. That's why road safety is so important to me. I know that I must slow down and be extra careful when I make a wide turn. Buses need more room than cars. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, remember to give buses plenty of time and space to finish turning before driving ahead. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Conte is from Arizona. We have Dustin Dobbyn on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Dustin is a former Mojave County Sheriff's detective. And before that, he worked for a police department in Arizona. Before that, he was the United States Marine Corps, stationed in Afghanistan, saw some combat there. He's author of the book, Perseverance, the Operator's Mindset. And his website, get more information about what he does, takeon1.com. That's TACON, the number 1.com. First of all, we talked about the fire scene. Have you put that to rest or put it in its proper place, or does it still bother you?
Well, it was one thing that bothered me for a long time. That was one of those cases where you went home and, you showered afterwards because you're covered in soot and remains of the house. But, that was one where you hug your kids and you really appreciate your family. And, I struggled. I didn't let my wife light candles and would check the stove and things, throughout the night for a very long time. But, I think I'm definitely much better than I was at that point.
Here's the thing, that these things, that I put them in a proper place, but that doesn't mean they don't come up periodically.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I appreciate you talking about it even more so, because it brings up a lot of unpleasant memories. Secondly, we're going to talk about a murder investigation you're involved in, where the family, the mother and father of one of the deputies that you worked with, they were killed.
Yep.
Was the deputy working?
Yeah, so he had either was working or he had worked earlier in the day, but he had known that a call had come out at his parents' house, which was about, I'd say probably 30 or 45 minutes away from where he lived.
Don't tell me he had one of the scanner devices in his back in the day.
No, so I think it was another deputy who had tipped him off that a call had come out at his parents' house, who was also very close with this deputy. So, we obviously had to immediately do damage control and make sure that he didn't show up, and we weren't leaking any information to him.
That's another thing that my wife and I don't like watching American-made police dramas, because quite often they get it wrong, and it's that people that are intimately involved in crime, they are not allowed to get involved. That's a TV thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And part of the reason why, and I want to get to your story in a moment, is because typically when it comes to investigating crimes, especially violent crimes, which this certainly is one of them, you go from the crime scene, you work your way out. And you can't walk in with a preconceived idea of what happened. You've got to let the evidence dictate the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Neutral fact finders.
And what was your role in this investigation?
So I was the case detective assigned to this case.
Wow, lucky you.
Yeah.
First of all, before we get into the case, how's that deputy doing?
Oh, he's much better. Yeah, he's still a good friend of mine. We stay in contact, and he's worked past it. The bad guys are in jail, and that's what matters.
Well, and I'm going to fast forward. You made 3 arrests, and they were found guilty. They're incarcerated. That's the last one. Talk about the case itself. What happened?
Yeah, so, this was one of those times I had just gotten home from a normal day's work, and I was the on-call detective. The detective sergeant called me and let me know that there was a double homicide out in basically the boonies, middle of nowhere. Little, very small, unincorporated town outside of, the main cities. And we showed up. I wasn't told any of the backstory information at that time until I showed up on scene. We were treating it as any other case, any other homicide, beginning the paperwork, the search warrants, things like that. And then I was briefed on the fact that it was a fellow deputy's parents who were located deceased inside the house. And
that's, I'm put it bluntly, that's unusual.
Very unusual. And, it adds a personal level to the case. You now, your victim is somebody that you know and love dearly, and that changes things. And
the mother and father of the deputy that were killed, was it obvious to you as a homicide?
Yeah, absolutely. The way the bodies were, they were stacked on top of each other, and, blood, typical homicide scene.
And by the way, the reason I'm bringing that up is not to sound idiotic, but a lot of people don't seem to understand that some things are obvious homicides, though police are not allowed to say that until a medical examiner does an autopsy. But sometimes things look like they're suicides or unexpected deaths, and it turns out it's a homicide. And a lot of it has to do with the backstory or the context.
Yeah. So, and this one in particular was, the bodies or the remains, they were found by a neighbor who was trusted, who was always in and out of that house freely. And he had let us know, for sure they had been murdered. First glance for us doing our security sweep, we noticed immediately it was a homicide because the female victim, her hands had been chopped off of the body. So not typical for an accidental death or anything like that.
No, and it's usually a good indicator that the suspect or person involved, if they're not there, that doesn't happen accidentally by itself.
Absolutely.
Here's the question: when hands are removed, it's often, and maybe I'm old and I'm old-fashioned imagining, it's often because of identifying the victims in fingerprints. Was that the case with this?
So this one, we had gotten some information that possibly the male subject in this case was selling marijuana on the side. So having been a former gang detective with my first agency, my mind instantly went to a cartel type thing or drug-related crime, a stealing, something like that, which is typical. But actually what turned out was exactly like you're talking about. During the struggle with the suspect, one of the suspects, the female had scratched the suspect, and he was worried about the DNA under the fingernail. So there was an identifying factor. Were the hands located and found? Yes. Surprisingly, after I believe it was a day or two, we apprehended all 3 suspects in the case, and we got a confession from the main suspect who had removed the hands. We actually ended up getting him out of jail, and he took us to where he had tried to bury him in the desert, and surprisingly, wildlife, nothing had gotten to him yet, and we were able to recover the hands. That sounds like it's good police work. I got a question for you that... when did you realize that you knew who the bad guys were and what their motives were? So this is, and sometimes in police work, things just fall into place, and this was one of those cases. This house was kind of like a cabin-type structure out in the middle of nowhere, so there was no working power. So even, after our security sweep, we waited until the morning time to start to execute that warrant, so we had the light of day to be able to see the scene a little bit better. But for a camera system, the homeowners had put a game camera in the front yard, and we were able to extract the SD card off of that and clearly see the vehicle, the suspects running in. I mean, it was picture perfect the way it worked out.
When you were doing the investigation, what was their reason for committing this crime? Often there is a reason, and I know they say this, I didn't mean to kill them, it was an accident, quite often. But there's usually another crime beforehand. Did you determine what that was?
Oh, yeah. So, throughout the investigation, the interviews and everything, it was actually another relative of the family who had moved away many years ago. But there was an accusation of sexual assault between the male subject, the male victim, and the sister of this other family member. And he had not been able to let it go. I think it was like 6 or 7 years prior. He lived in another state. He decided one day he was going to come back to Arizona and then confront the male victim in this case.
We'll return that conversation in just a moment. We're talking with Dustin Dobbyn. He's a former Mojave County, Arizona Sheriff's detective. And we're talking about a murder where a mother and father of a deputy he worked with were killed. He's authored the book Perseverance, The Operator's Mindset, and a website. You can get more information about him, what he does, TACON1.com. That's TACON, the number 1.com. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com. That's letradio.com. There you'll find episodes of the show available as a podcast after airing on radio. And they're always free. There's 700 plus episodes on there right now. There's blogs. Get information about our sponsors. All that and much more at letradio.com. Again, the website is letradio.com.
I drive my bus in a busy city. That's why road safety is so important to me. I know that I must slow down and be extra careful when I make a wide turn. Buses need more room than cars. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, remember to give buses plenty of time and space to finish turning before driving ahead. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Return our conversation with Dustin Dobbyn on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. He is a former Mojave County Sheriff's detective. He is also a police officer in another agency in Arizona. Before that, he was a United States Marine Corps veteran in Afghanistan. He's written a book called Perseverance, The Operator's Mindset, which is available pretty much everywhere, and a website you can get more details about him, what he does, TACON1.com. That's TACON, the number 1.com. Before we went to break, Dustin, you're talking about this murder, and there was pressing, unresolved issues that the suspect had with one of the victims?
Yep, exactly right. And, a physical altercation ensued in which the female victim in this case jumped in, and the suspect had a gun. He shot both of them, killing them, and then removed the hands of the female victim because he was worried about the DNA under her fingernails.
And all that,
into the murder.
He got found guilty anyway.
100%.
And I would love to say that he's cooling his heels appropriately in the Gray Bar Motel.
That's it. And he'll be there the rest of his life.
By the way, there's things, I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong, but if you have this going on, there's ways to handle it, and that is not the way to handle it.
Yeah, that's correct. And, that previous case had been adjudicated with, no charges or anything like that. But, that was his motive, and he stuck to it.
And did this dwell on you, or did it hang around? And because that's a heavy-duty crime.
Yeah, that was a challenging case. Again, this was during COVID. We were all battling what was going on with COVID at home. Being a detective during that time, constantly being called out. I was on the SWAT team as well, and I was also an instructor at the police academy. So, very busy.
Before we do that, is there anything you didn't volunteer for?
No, not really. So, just very, very busy time, and stuff like that takes a toll on the family, and then you have to go to work and still do your job.
One of the things that I always say was it wasn't the really big things that I struggle with. It was the mundane day in, day out policing. And this is all before we had peer support teams, critical incident debriefing, all that stuff. That wasn't even thought of. What we had for therapeutic reasons was a case of beer in a parking lot. That's what we did.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, those resources are out there, but a lot of guys, they fail to use them because of the stigma behind it. You don't want to be viewed as weak, so... And that's not the right way to think. If you need to talk to somebody, you definitely need to talk to somebody.
One of the things that I tell people, and I get this question far more often than you would think. So people, when they realize what I did, what I do now, and they're like, oh, meet my son, meet my daughter. They want to be a police officer. What advice do we give them? And they're shocked when I tell them. The advice I give them is, you go to see a dentist every year for an examination. You go to a general practitioner every year for an examination. Get yourself a trauma-informed therapist and go see them before the bad stuff happens. Be proactive. Don't make the agency send you.
Absolutely. And, like I mentioned, I left the Marine Corps, jumped right into law enforcement.
You didn't give yourself a break at all, did you?
Yeah, no decompression period, and eventually that cup's going to overfill, and you got to take care of it.
One of the best analogies, years of doing this show, that someone gave me, and it stuck with me, they're saying, and I imagine is the case with you, and I'm a foreman in a phrase of a question. He said that policing in the United States was like getting a brand new state-of-the-art backpack. And every call you went to, everything you handled, every crime you handled, was you're picking up a stone or pebble and putting it in a backpack. Some are big, some are small, but there's going to come a point, if you don't unload that burden, it's going to break, and the impact can be devastating. Was it devastating for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Everything that went through in the military and through law enforcement and childhood, everything, it all added up. And, one day I ended up saying enough was enough, and I wasn't going to do it anymore. And, I ended up dipping my toe back in and doing it the right way.
When you say dipping your toe back in and doing it the right way, there was a come to Jesus moment, I'm sure, for you, where you're like, I've got to do things differently.
Absolutely.
And I look back now, and some of the things, they seemed corny at the time. The guys who always brought their lunch, the guys who went square dancing, the guys who stayed members of their church, did all that stuff I thought was super square at the time. They're the ones that did better. If you like a hobby, stick with it. Don't make this job your entire life. Did you make it your entire life?
I did, and I didn't know how to turn it off. Like I said, I volunteered for all those things, and I never said no to anything. So, I ended up burning myself out, essentially.
How old were you when you burned out?
I was 33, 34.
That's still young. That's a young man. And I got to ask this question, and whether you answer or not is totally up to you. A lot of people, they become salty. That's a term we have for veteran officers, that you can't tell them nothing, or they leave law enforcement altogether. Was that the choice for you?
Yeah, so, I had joined the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old, so I was very young when I joined, and then, like I said, I never gave myself a break, so I didn't like who I was becoming. I found solutions to my problems at the bottom of a bottle, and that was the way I coped with it, and I didn't like the person I was becoming because I was salty. I was angry, and I despised going to work where, when I first started, it was a job I loved and I would get excited for, but everything seemed to change after a while. And
the question was, for me anyway, was what really changed? The job didn't change. I'm the one who changed. Yep.
That's exactly it.
And Dustin, I'm not going to ask you this, but there came a point where I became deeply ashamed of who I was, not what I did, of the person I've become.
Yep.
Okay, that's good. And I'm not going to ask you that, but that's good you admit that. Is that when you decided to write the book?
No, so I'd left law enforcement. I had some buddies who were doing private security contracting, and I was hearing about all the money they were making and how, it was a real work-life balance. You go work a 3-month contract and make all the money you need for the year and take the rest of the time off. and then all the stresses of work and the people had changed a little bit. The environment changed around 2020. And, like I said, it was becoming a job where I hated coming to work every day. I was getting anxiety every time I would make it to the detective bureau and wondering what kind of caseload I had for the day. And, I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I left, and I did a lot of weird, odd jobs. My buddy, he worked, he had opened a butcher shop, and I helped him there for a while. I was helping some attorneys with some private investigation cases.
I did that too. I hated it.
Yeah, it was terrible.
The clientele were horrible.
Yeah. And then I started picking up private security contracts and seeing it was a lot of guys who were just like me. I got a bunch of guys who were military veterans and law enforcement veterans who wanted a better job, a better quality of life, and I fell right into it.
Well, one of the things that about this job is so much is beyond your control. And we work shift work. We had rotating days off. We had weekends. If you're a detective, you do anything to get off the street after a while. And then you had the phone call late at night. You got to go handle it. There's no saying no. So when you wrote the book, was there cathartic reasons for doing it, or did you write as a prevention aid for other people?
Prevention aid for other people was mainly it. I didn't want people to make the same mistake I did. And I had heard about it. All the senior guys telling me, don't burn yourself out. If you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. But
that's good. That's good for someone else. That's not, I don't need that. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, 100%. And then, you know what? One day it hit me, and I thought I should have listened to everybody.
Yeah. The good news is we're having a conversation now. The bad news is, and I'll remind people this, when I was in the academy, police academy, we had a major come talk to us. He said the average life expectancy for a Baltimore City police officer then was 52. They usually die within 2 years of retiring. The average life expectancy for American male police now is 58. While the average, from what I've seen, for American men is 73. Still dying too young. Stress, PTSD, alcohol, shift work, all that plays a part. So the fact that you are talking about this is not lost on me. We're talking with Dustin Dobbyn, former Mojave County Sheriff's Detective, Marine Corps veteran, Police Department veteran in Arizona as well, and he's authored the book Perseverance, the Operator's Mindset. And his website, you can get more information about him, is tacon1.com. It's TACON1.com. Again, Dustin, thanks for your service, and thanks for talking about it on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Both very much appreciated.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me.
This was a podcast version of the nationally syndicated Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, and we are so glad that you decided to join us. Big thanks to our guests for telling their story on the show. 2 simple things you can do. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com. That's letradio.com. And be sure to follow us or like us on Facebook. Do a search on Facebook for Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And be sure when you see a post that we put up that you like, that you resonate with, that gets your attention, be sure to share it with your friends. We'll be back in just a few days with another great episode of the show. See you then.
I drive my bus in a busy city. That's why road safety is so important to me. I know that I must slow down and be extra careful when I make a wide turn. Buses need more room than cars. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, remember to give buses plenty of time and space to finish turning before driving ahead. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.